I am Ankit Sinha. I am currently in year 13. I'm 17 years old. And I am a member of the Redbridge Ambassadors of Faith and Belief. We call ourselves AFABs. So, a little background about the scheme. It was started 2 years ago, and it was initially run as a pilot scheme. And the idea kind of behind it was that Redbridge is a particularly diverse area. And during religious education, lots of the teachers that were kind of teaching this, teaching their subject, they could give personal points about their own faith and their own religion. But some of the other ones that were covered in the syllabus, they might not be able to give a first-hand experience of. So it was kind of third-hand, what they learned from the internet or perhaps what they learned from a textbook. And we believe that that's, although it's a good way of teaching, it's not the best way of allowing primary school children to kind of take on board what's being taught. So the idea was to combine presenters and ambassadors coming to primary schools and giving their own personal views of their own religion and faith, combine this with showing a teenage ambassador. So all the ambassadors have been in year 12 while they're presenting. And this allows, I think, primary school children to relate better to the ambassadors, and they're more likely to look up to them as a role model as opposed to a teacher who's kind of, there's a strict difference and a strict barrier between them. So I'll start, I guess, with kind of the training, because at the Redbridge Ambassadors Faith and Belief, we are trained to present. So it starts over the year 11 summer. We all go to Newbury Park Primary School, where the scheme is based, and we spend a few weeks getting trained in how to present, just generally, how to think critically and analyze your own faith, and kind of be aware of each of the individual aspects of it. So in this way, I in fact learned a fair amount about my own religion and faith, which I hadn't been aware of before. So I am a Hindu, and there are other Hindus there as well. So just differences in the aspects of how religion is practiced was quite interesting. And I think it's also really useful for the people that are presenting to dispel any kind of misconceptions that they might have about other faiths and religions. For example, I'm sure that I've been told, in fact, that lots of the people there were unaware that in Hinduism there is in fact only one God. And this is a misconception that many people have. So when I was kind of giving a practice presentation and made them aware of this, it kind of shocked them and it caused further conversation. And this was really useful because it didn't just allow you to delve more deeply into your own faith, but it allowed you to be more aware of others. So the purpose is, as I've said, to allow primary school children to be more aware of other religions and to be more accepting of them, I guess. And one of the particular aspects of the scheme is that, well, the way it works, I guess, is we have a website where we have each of our ambassadors up. You can see it on our board over there if you would like to come a little later. And any primary school teacher can click on one of the ambassadors, book them to come in to their classroom and just to give a presentation, a general presentation. And for after this, which is, I think, the most critical bit, for there to be a question and answer session between the ambassador and the primary school children. And I say this is the most critical bit because although children learn a fair amount, primary school children learn a fair amount from a kind of interactive presentation, which we're taught to do, the questions are kind of at the heart of what the primary school children want to know. So an example of some of the really kind of weird, but in quite philosophical questions that primary school children might ask, an example of this would be, one of my friends, his name is Sachin, and he is a Christian. He's a Marthoma Christian. So when he was talking about how some Christians, not his own particular faith, but some others, when they go to church, they might drink some wine to represent the blood of Christ. One child put their hand up and asked, "So do you get drunk at church then?" So this sort of question, you wouldn't ask this normally. It's kind of, there's some social barrier there, but because they are children, they perhaps might not understand this. They're completely open to asking this. And this really puts Sachin on the back foot. But we're kind of trained to work out how to answer this. So you're meant to be really open, accept the point of view, and try and think critically about your own faith whilst giving an answer. So an example that I personally faced was, it's really weird. Lots of the girls in primary school classes really are interested in how I would name my children and how that would be related to my faith. So they would ask like what particular names might mean. And it's quite difficult to relate this to your own faith, but there is a tangible link there. And the question was inherently philosophical because I'd been talking about the marriage ceremony and how kind of religion is entwined in that. So it really helps you think critically about your own faith. And I guess I'd like to end on the fact that it's not just useful for the primary school teacher who gets a first-hand point of view given to their children, and it's not just useful for the children who get this kind of outside experience, but it's also useful for the ambassador themselves. All of the ambassadors, I think there were 12 last year, who joined up and went through this training scheme and had this practice at presenting to primary school children. They've come leaps and bounds in confidence in their presentation style so they can vary who they're presenting to. And that's going to be useful not just in this presentation kind of situation, but also further on, perhaps when they're going into university interviews. These sort of skills that they gain are really, really useful, and they're kind of a good addition to what they learn about their own faith. So I think that's what makes this scheme really important, and it's a good kind of contributor to the community in Redbridge. Thank you.
Hello there, my name is Pedram. I am from the World Congress of Faiths. My question is to yourself and your fellow panelists. One of my colleagues at WCF was trained to be a religious education teacher, and she was telling me that majority of the teachers, RE teachers, were not officially trained in that subject. They tend to be from different subjects, including physical education, which just filled in their calendar. So what is your opinion on that?
Well, personally, we weren't really trained in what to teach because that was kind of left to us, and it was meant to be a purely personal view that we were putting across. What we were trained to do was to avoid some of the pitfalls that are incorporated when presenting to children. So one of these might, for example, we were especially told that when we were giving a personal point of view, like, I might go to the temple, for example, 3 times a month to meditate, that we had to ensure that we said some people might, or I might. We didn't say all Hindus would do this. So it was very, very important for us to make sure that we weren't generalizing in any way or kind of enforcing any of the stereotypes that might already be present. We were dispelling them. And I think it was also very important to make sure that we weren't presenting in a kind of preaching way. So we weren't trying to convert anyone. We were purely there to give our own personal opinion, which the primary school children could kind of decide what they wanted to take from it. So it was kind of more training on how to present rather than what to present.
Yeah, the question was who trains the ambassadors, or how are you trained, and what role do you as ambassadors have in the training of other or new ambassadors? So
the training starts at this, during the Year 11 summer, so for me that's a year ago now. Wow, that's a long time ago. Right. So there are generally 3 teachers from Newbury Park Primary School that are incorporated in this. So there's Mrs. Diamond Conway, who is over there, Mr. Whitehead, who is the head teacher of Newbury Park, and Miss Chisholm. And they are all collectively responsible for the training. So what we do is we first start off by delving more deeply into our own religions, so making sure we have a solid foundation of what we kind of believe in, so that if we are asked any kind of deep, insightful questions, we don't crack under the pressure, I guess. So we kind of do that initial research first, and then we start building up a presentation. And they are analysed quite critically by all 3 members, and they are not afraid to give feedback. So lots of us have had to rewrite presentations completely because they might be slightly off or giving kind of the wrong message across or have the emphasis incorrectly. And I guess the most important aspect of it is at the end of the summer, when school has started again in September, we kind of have a test, I guess you could call it. We go into a Newbury Park classroom with another AFAB and the primary school teacher, the class teacher, and we present to them as a kind of initial preliminary test, and we get lots of feedback, and they're the kind of final judge of if you're giving across the right message, if you're acting professionally, and if you're, I guess, being useful for what your role is. And as for AFABs training other AFABs, we are brought in, but we kind of don't do the training because we're not obviously professional. We give our own opinions and we kind of give advice at the start of the training period. But I guess because we're in year 13 now, we have university applications, etc. So it's a lot of work to do. So we're not kind of directly involved in that training.